Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome back for this installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open, the floor is yours. What do you guys want to talk about? That is what we're here to discuss today. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. Good to have you guys here. And here's how our show goes. This is really more of a casual, laid-back version of the main show, where really just all we do is have a conversation, take your comments and questions. Now, if you have a thought, comment, question, observation, theory, whatever that you'd like to share, as long as I deem it appropriate for me to address on the show, go ahead and use the super chat feature there in the live chat and fire it on in. The super chats are currently open. I will let you guys know before I'm about to turn them off, but they are open right now, so you guys are free to send in questions as we go through the show. All right, guys. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I already have a great day lined up. Ann and I tonight are going to the annual John Williams, the maestro of the movies, at the Hollywood Bowl tonight. They do this concert every year, playing all the music of John Williams with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and it's always a great time. I don't think John Williams this year is going to himself be conducting. I do think he's going to be there and telling stories and all that kind of stuff, and I think his protege, David Newman, is going to be doing the conducting. But either way, Ann and I love this concert. We go every single year. And we're going with our friends Kaori. And for any of you guys who watch AEW, Nigel McGuinness. So the four of us are going to be going off to go see the show tonight. Should be a lot of fun. And I know some of you guys, because a bunch of you guys have been writing in saying you're going to be going to that show too. I hope everybody has a great time tonight. And I am looking forward to it. All right. With that down, guys, you know we like to start our open mics with a particular topic, and wow, did a big topic drop yesterday afternoon. As you guys know, some time ago, there was an horrible tragedy that happened on set of a Hollywood movie, Rust, with Alec Baldwin. And I think Jensen Ackles from Supernatural and who plays Soldier Boy in The Boys, I believe Jensen Ackles was in that movie as well. Anyway, there was a horrible tragedy as what was supposed to be a prop gun actually had a live ammunition round in it and ended up wounding the director, but also killing the cinematographer. And it's led to a lot of stuff going on and a lot of finger pointing and trying to figure out who gets held responsible and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, one of the guys that got charged was Alec Baldwin. Not because anybody believed Alec Baldwin tried to hurt anybody, but rather because Alec Baldwin was the actor holding the gun when, you know, it went off and it killed the cinematographer. Now, of course, I personally, my own position on this from the very, very beginning has been, number one, there has clearly been negligence here and somebody needs to be held responsible. But number two, the person responsible was not the actor holding the gun who was told by the people in charge that the gun was 100% cold. That means it was 100% safe. And there's a multiple step procedure in Hollywood sets where first an official armorer, whenever you got a movie involving prop guns and stuff like that, movies have an armorer. And that armorer, it was primarily their job to make sure that, to go over the prop gun, the fake gun, whatever, to make sure it was 100% safe. Then, as the procedure goes, the armorer hands it over to the assistant director. The assistant director gives it a once over and confirms that the gun is safe. Once that happens, according to set procedure, the assistant director or whoever the representative is bringing the weapon on set declares on set, cold gun, right? They come out and they yell out, cold gun. That means a fake, completely inoperable, 100% gun is coming on set, right? That's what it means. So they declare cold gun. So that way, the actor, who is not a weapons expert, the actor knows that there's this prop coming onto set, and that prop is 100% safe. And actors rely on that information because they're not weapons experts. So what happened was, Alec Baldwin, as the actor, was on set. The armorer inspected the gun, not really, but the armorer inspected the gun, handed it off to the assistant director. The assistant director came onto set, proclaimed out loud, "Cold gun," telling the actor and the director and the cinematographer and everybody on set that this thing coming on set was 100% safe. So Alec Baldwin, the actor, took it, pointed it. The scene was supposed to point it at the camera for one of those camera shots. And there was a live round of ammunition in it. It went off and it killed the cinematographer. Now, appropriately so, the armorer was found guilty in court of negligence. The person whose responsibility it was to inspect the gun and declare it safe. That person did go to trial. She was found guilty, and she is currently serving, I believe, an 18-month prison sentence. Now, obviously, the armorer never intended for anybody to be harmed, but that was criminal negligence. So the armorer was found guilty, held responsible, and is currently serving out a sentence. I believe the assistant director entered a plea deal. So the assistant director, I don't believe, is getting any jail time. I could be wrong about that, but they entered a plea deal for their testimony and all that kind of stuff. And then ultimately went on to Alec Baldwin. Now, like this has been a common refrain during all this. One of our viewers here, Baba, is saying, clearly he didn't inspect it correctly. The actor's not supposed to be the one to inspect it. That's because you know why? An actor inspecting it is meaningless because they're not a weapons expert. The actor needs, and the people on set need to rely on a professional armorer to inspect it and to declare it safe. Here's the situation, the way I describe it to people. For anybody who thinks that Alec Baldwin should have been held criminally responsible for this, this is the exact scenario. Imagine you're having a party at your house and you've got a caterer in the kitchen making up some pastries, and you go into the kitchen and the chef, the pastry chef, hands you a plate full of donuts. Says, "Here you go. You can serve this to your guests." And you have no reason to believe these donuts aren't safe. You don't have a single reason in the world to believe these donuts aren't safe. There's a professional chef in the kitchen doing their job. They know food. They know food safety. There's no way you, not being a professional chef, would know if these donuts are safe or not. You just rely that these donuts are safe. You have no reason to believe the donuts aren't safe. So you get handed the donuts, and then you go out into your living room, serve your guests. One of your donuts had rat poison fall in it before you got them, and that person died. Is that your fault? I mean, no. There was no reason you should have been led to believe that the donuts weren't safe. If you get into a car and start driving it and the brakes fail, is it your fault because, somebody at the garage didn't do their job right, told you the brakes are safe, you believed the car was totally safe, then you got into an intersection, went to hit the brakes totally failed, you went through and you hit another car. Are you criminally liable for that? When somebody at the garage, you are not a mechanic. You are not qualified to get under the car and inspect the brakes to know that they were safe. You had every single right to rely on the fact that a professional inspected it and supposedly did their job, and you went ahead and did your thing. Someone in the live chat is saying the donut and the gun are two different things. No, they're not. They're not. In both instances, there was somebody who is a professional at that stuff that gave you assurances that that thing, whether it was the gun or the donut, was completely safe. And then you received the gun or the donut being told it was 100% safe. You're not a weapons expert and you're not a pastry chef. You're not an expert in being able to inspect those things, and it's not your job to do that. And then you took it into an area where somebody got hurt as a result of that gun or that donut. It's not different. It's the exact same scenario. It's the exact same scenario. Now, some people are bringing up the fact that Baldwin was a producer on the film. True. But that has nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, a few days ago in the trial, the judge ruled that Baldwin being a producer on the film has nothing to do with criminal liability at all. This was ruled in court. The judge ruled Alec Baldwin being a producer on the movie by the law had nothing to do with criminal liability. Zero. That was already established in court, that had nothing to do with it. Now, this is where it gets interesting. While the judge ruled completely that Alec Baldwin being one of the producers on the film in no way ties into criminal liability, rightfully so, there's a difference between criminal liability and, say, fiduciary reliability. Let's say you're in Walmart and somebody spills some apple juice on the floor and you go walking down that aisle and slip on that apple juice and break your arm. Walmart is not criminally liable for that happening. Walmart didn't do anything wrong. They didn't try to harm you. They didn't try to hurt you. There's no criminal liability for Walmart. However, there could be civil liability. Like, nobody at Walmart's facing any jail time for you slipping on stuff, but it was in their store and therefore they could be sued in civil court for money. And so remember, this is the criminal part of the Alec Baldwin thing. He's been cleared of any criminal charges here. We'll get around to what ended it. So there's no criminal charges. It's over. But that doesn't mean there couldn't be some money that happens, right? There could be a civil case still brought, because there's a difference between civil liability and criminal liability. And since Alec Baldwin is a producer on that film, there is a chance that in civil court, he might be found liable. Maybe, I don't know how that's going to go, but he could be found liable as a producer on the movie where that cinematographer tragically lost her life, and there could be some money involved, but there's no criminal charges. So the judge ruled that him being a producer had zero implications, zero relevance when it came to the criminal charges. It was all about, was Alec Baldwin the actor who was on set and told by weapons experts that this thing he was handed was a totally safe prop. Weapons experts handed it to him and declared it a completely safe prop. You would have done the exact same thing. Alec Baldwin did the exact same thing. He was told by a weapons expert, this thing I got in my hand is just a toy. It's a 100% thing, because that's what they told me. And so relying on that information, they went through the motions of doing the scene and somebody lost their life. And rightfully so, the armorer was held criminally responsible. The armorer was held criminally responsible. Now, here's where it got really interesting, though. It was never in any doubt. There was never any doubt that no jury was ever going to convict Alec Baldwin of this, because clearly he was an actor, not a weapons expert, who got handed a gun that was proclaimed completely safe by weapons experts, and a tragedy happened. He was never going to be found guilty, ever in a million years. There was no chance in the world that Alec Baldwin was going to be found guilty. No chance. But it didn't even get to the verdict. And why didn't they even get to a verdict? Because the special prosecutor, who has clearly just been trying to make Alec, even though the armorer was already held criminally liable and is now in jail, the special prosecutor decided she wanted to have a big celebrity, wanted Alec Baldwin for it. But here's the problem. the special prosecutor on 4 different occasions hid evidence from the court and from the defense. And where it finally hit its final straw, actual live rounds of ammunition were found on the set, and the prosecution never told the defense about it. I'm not making this up. This sounds like a bad plot twist in a movie. I'm not making this up. Because what's the number one big question been around this whole Rust thing? How the hell did live rounds get onto the set? How the hell did that happen? Why were there even live rounds anywhere near the set? Right? That's been the number one question everybody on both sides has been asking. We've all been asking the same question. Why the hell and how the hell were live rounds on that set? And are there more? Well, it got revealed that the prosecution knew they found live rounds. And because they didn't want the defense to know about it or to dig into it, they hid it. That is against the law. That violates trial procedure. All you have to do is watch one episode of Law & Order, and you know that the prosecution is not allowed to hide important evidence from the court and from the defense. And so, the prosecution knew that we found live rounds of ammunition. My God, don't tell the defense. This could help their case. Don't let the defense know that we found this. That's illegal. And so when it came to light that for the 4th time in this very short trial, the prosecution hid evidence from the defense, the judge had no choice. And the judge said, look, this whole thing is a circus. I'm dismissing this. And here's the important part. I'm dismissing the case with prejudice. What does that mean when the judge says we're dismissing the case with prejudice? With prejudice means a lot of different things, but the important thing about this case means he can't be retried. He can't be retried. It's over. There are times when a case can be dismissed that charges can then later be brought again, but with the case being dismissed with prejudice, they can't bring the charges again. The judge basically said, you made this whole thing a circus. And so we're done here. So Alec Baldwin, he didn't even have to be found not guilty. They just declared this thing a mistrial right from the beginning. And again, it doesn't matter because he never was going to be found guilty. There was no chance in hell any jury with any common sense was going to find him guilty. But the prosecution was trying every dirty trick they could, including hiding evidence from the court and from the defense. Evidence, including the most important question all of us have been asking. How the hell did live rounds and live ammunition get there in the first place? Oh, you found the live rounds, so we can figure this out? Shh. Nope. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody that we found live rounds. We don't want the defense digging into it. We don't want the defense finding further supportive evidence. Shh. And that ultimately led to him, rightfully so, being acquitted. Now, again, while criminally, this is all now over. It's over. The assistant director had a plea deal. The armorer was found guilty in court and is serving a sentence in jail. And Alec Baldwin, rightfully, as the actor who was told by a weapons expert that the gun was completely safe, has been exonerated. Not like the thing's been dismissed. Not going to face any more criminal charges. Criminally, this whole Rust situation is now over, completely over. What remains, though, is what happens now with civil litigation. Are there going to be people that sue the production and sue Alec Baldwin? That's completely different from criminal. So, and there could be financial liability. Again, listen, that director was shot and that cinematographer lost her life on the set of that movie. And just like you slipping and falling in a Walmart, even if it wasn't really Walmart's fart. It wasn't Walmart's fart. It wasn't Walmart's fault. There's no criminal liability there. There could be civil penalties. And so this could still hit Alec Baldwin and other people involved in the pocketbook. That could still happen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We won't know for sure. But the criminal aspect of this entire Rust situation is now over. So, guys, whatever you think about it, let me know your thoughts. Now, a good question from King Daddy Goat. Does the movie still happen? I don't know. Because here's something really funny that happened last year. The widower, the husband of the slain cinematographer, joined on as a producer on the film, and his statements at the time basically were about, she died doing what she loved, making movies. We want to honor her. We want to see this movie finished. So there are signs and indications that they may actually finish this movie. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, but we'll see. We'll absolutely see. One other thing I want to bring up here, and I know both Chris and I and Rob have all brought this up before, but it really does, and we think this Rust situation, one of the good things that may come out of it is the fact that in the world of digital effects and in the world of all the stuff that we have available to us, there is simply no need for guns to be on set anymore. There's just no need. Not even guns that fire blanks. There's no need for it. A high school student with After Effects can add in muzzle flashes and gunshot sounds in post in like one afternoon. In one easy afternoon. There's so many plugins to do it now. There's simply no reason for anything that even resembles a real gun to be on the set of a movie, let alone ones that could potentially fire live rounds. And why Hollywood has continued to practice this, it looks more authentic. Anyway, so I'm glad the thing is gone. I'm glad we're seeing people moving over to these things, and we'll see what kind of stuff happens later on in the future. All right. With that down, guys, let's move on now to the most important part of our show, the main reason that we're here, which is taking your live comments and questions, shall we? So we'll get things rolling here with Aiden Foley, who writes, favorite Rush song, mine is Roll the Bones or 2112. I think for me, it has to be New World Man. I mean, everybody else is going to say Tom Sawyer. And it's a great song. It's awesome. So that's the one most people will say is Tom Sawyer. I think for me it's the bass line in New World Man. I mean, this thing, everybody forgets, like, because Geddy Lee's the lead singer of Rush, right? Everybody forgets how world class of a bass player he is. I mean, you look at the Geddy Alex, Neil Peart, probably the greatest drummer of all time. Oh, that band is so good. Yeah, so for me, I'd say New World Man. That's me. Let's see here. Next up, we've got Orange Hand, who writes, I wonder if more people are looking forward to Star Wars shows being edited down into movies than the shows themselves. Would you watch an Acolyte fan edit? I think I'd be curious to see an Acolyte fan edit because, again, there was that Obi-Wan was not, I mean, if you liked Obi-Wan, awesome. I'm not trying to disparage you or take away from your enjoyment of it. I'm just saying for me, Obi-Wan was pretty poor. I thought Obi-Wan was pretty bad. Started strong, got pretty bad. But then that one dude, and I always feel bad that I forget his name, that one dude did that edit where he cut out like 45 minutes of it, moved some things around, like moved complete scenes around, put the whole thing in different order and edited it into like a 2-hour and 45-minute movie. And it was actually pretty good. It was definitely better than the Obi-Wan series was. I would be interested in seeing a fan edit of The Acolyte edited down into just like 2.5 hour movie. But I don't know that I think it would make it much better because it's just the foundational building blocks of, like, the most basic building blocks of making good narrative were the ones that they screwed up. Terrible characters other than Soul, terrible dialogue, no B or C or D level storylines. It's so linear. John, but they jump in time. No, I'm not talking about jumping in time linear. I mean, it's just such a mono-narristic story that it's dull. I just don't know that with The Acolyte, there's any saving it, even with a fan edit. Again, though, I would be interested in seeing it. I would be interested in seeing it. We'll see. All right. Next up, Arun writes, this season of The Boys is so well written that I am scared for any characters on screen with Homelander could be lasered by him. Anthony Starr rocks. Listen, that's been the thing about, like, when Homelander in season 1 killed, what was the head person of Vought's name? Was her name Madeline? The girl from Karate Kid. Was the character's name Madeline? Help me out in the live chat, guys. I can't remember. But, like, once he killed her, it's like, oh yeah, anybody could die. Anybody who's on screen with Homelander at any time could die. Stillwell, says Dragon 10. That was her last name, right? Was her first name Madeline, or am I imagining that? It was Madeline Stillwell. Okay, great. So when Homelander killed her, like, I was really kind of frankly surprised, but it kind of set the tone that anybody on screen with Homelander could die at any second. And that's part of what makes Homelander such a terrifying character. He's so mentally unbalanced and yet such a rich character because they often make us feel empathy for him at the same time. The Boys is just such a insanely well-written show. It's crazy. All right. Next up, we've got D Games, who writes, I finally started Game of Thrones last week, and I am currently on season 3, episode 6. Nice. I love the show so far, and Tyrion Lannister is my favorite character. Peter Dinklage kills it. Listen, there's a reason Peter Dinklage, correct me in the live chat if I'm wrong, but did he not like win the Emmy 3 different years for Game of Thrones? I might be off on that a little bit, but I think for Game of Thrones, he won the Emmy 3 different years. I drink and I know things is still one of the greatest lines ever spoken by any character in any television show ever. He was so good in that role. And the character is so fantastic, right? It's a show filled with fantastic characters, and yet his really stood out as the most exceptional. And yeah, he was absolutely wonderful. And believe me, he only gets better. He only gets better. All right. Next up. I'm glad you're enjoying it, D Games. Next up, we've got Andy, who writes, I shouldn't be surprised, but I still can't believe The Boys actually did a bit with Firecracker about Jewish space lasers in the latest episode. The scary thing about The Boys is that, especially this season, they are doing and saying things that seem so ridiculous and so outlandish. But here's the scary part. Especially this season, the things they're doing and saying are direct correlations to things that are actually have happened in our real culture. We all know about the space laser thing, but the scary thing is a lot of things like a Firecracker says are direct quotes coming from certain crazy people in the world. That's the scariest thing about The Boys this year, is some of the most outlandish, ridiculous things being said and done are actually being taken from real things that have been said and done in our own culture. And that's the part of it that's like really incredibly scary. All right. Next up, Andy writes, the shape-shifting soup in The Boys changes form by literally shedding its old skin the same way that I'm glad somebody else noticed this. The way that shapeshifters in Supernatural do, but a little bit bloodier. Yes, I noticed that right away. It's like, the shapeshifter, that's how shapeshifters did it in Supernatural. But yes, this was a little bit more gruesome, but I'll tell you what, the whole twist at the end with Starlight chained up, I'm like, what? And then they showed how it happened. That was really well done. Very, very well done. All right. Thanks for that, Andy. Next up, Andy again writes, what will John Cena's movie career be like for the next several months until his retirement from WWE at WrestleMania 41? Thank you, Cena. I assume you mean, like, what will he be doing that hasn't already started? Because if you want to know literally what he's going to be doing in the next couple of months, just go to his IMDb. You can see what's coming out in the next. So he's got that one with Aquafina and Simu Liu. Something about the jackpot winner. I can't remember the name of it, but like Aquafina wins a jackpot, but in that world, in California, when somebody wins the jackpot, if you kill that person in 24 hours and take their ticket, you get the jackpot. It's kind of like a Running Man sort of thing. Whatever. It looks crazy, but I actually think it looks pretty funny. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But I think what you mean is like, what could he now get involved in over the next couple of months? I have a feeling he'll probably finish up with shooting Peacemaker and then probably just focus on wrestling. Like, he's so much of his career has been dedicated to, and he owes to, the world of professional wrestling. So my thought is, once he's done shooting Peacemaker 2, I think he'll then probably not shoot anything else until his wrestling is done. I don't know that for a fact. That's just my guess. All right. Next up, we've got Hank Pym, who writes, Long Legs Thursday night was the most packed theater I've been in all year other than Dune. I think we may be looking at a $30 million plus opening. Listen, I'll tell you what, this is turning into the little horror film that could. Like, I remember when I saw the first trailers for Long Legs, I thought, this actually looks pretty good. But I honestly didn't think a lot of other people would think so. Like, I thought, this looks pretty decent. This looks good. I didn't think it looked like the best thing of the year or anything, but I thought, this looks good. But it's going to be another, Nicolas Cage movie that a lot of people see a trailer for, say that looks good, and then nobody goes to see it. Like Pig. Or what was the recent one he did? I didn't like it at all, but the recent one he did where people have dreams about his character doing terrible things and they hold him responsible for it in real life, even though they only dreamed it and it's happening in their dreams. Dream Scenario. Yeah. So a lot of people loved Dream Scenario. I did not, but a lot of people did. Everybody who saw Pig loved it. But those movies didn't make any money. And when I saw the trailers for Long Legs, I thought this looks pretty decent. But in the back of my head, I just thought no one's going to go see it though. And then they started saying like, $20 million opening weekend projections and $25 million. I'm like, really? And a lot of people are talking about it. So we'll see how big of an opening weekend it has. I hope. I mean, Nicolas Cage deserves all the success in the world. So hopefully it works out well. All right. Next up, Hank Pym also writes, how'd Firecracker know about Homelander's milk fetish? Is that public knowledge in the world of The Boys? Also, thinking Mother's Milk is going to die in the finale. Yeah, I definitely think MM is going to die. Not because of what happens in the comics, because they're clearly deviating a lot from the comics. But I think you're right. I think they're setting up that MM dies. As far as how did Firecracker know, she clearly does her research. I mean, look, she's a conspiracy theorist, nut job, whatever in the show, but she probably pulled every string she could to find out everything about Homelander, maybe getting into Madeline Stillwell's files. I don't know, but it's not public knowledge. No, but somehow, some way she found out. Maybe in the show, they'll let us know how she found out. Maybe they won't, but it's not public knowledge. It definitely wasn't public knowledge. All right. Next up, Suthius writes, I rewatched the scene where milk is squirted in Homelander's face, and I'm thoroughly convinced his reaction was a legit, unexpected reaction from Star. I don't think so. I don't think so. Look, because they literally had to have a little hose down there getting ready to spray him in the face. Right? It's like the girl playing Firecracker didn't really open up her boobs and then literally unexpectedly squirt milk out of her nipple. So clearly for Anthony Starr to do the scene, they had to have a whole contraption there ready for it to happen. I think Anthony's just that good of an actor. Because the shock did look great. And listen, I don't know for a fact that he knew about it, but my assumption here is that he probably knew about it. All right. Next up, we've got Suthius again, who writes, I really don't understand the backlash of The Boys season 4 because of the political parody. I asked some of these people, did y'all not watch since the beginning? This show pokes fun at all sides. Okay, yeah, but to be fair, while throughout the 4 seasons, yes, absolutely, The Boys has poked fun at all sides. 100% it has. But to be fair, it saves the majority of its most scathing stuff for one side over the other. Right? And by the way, I don't even want to say one side over the other, because I heard somebody say, The Boys makes more fun of Republicans. And this will be the full extent of any political commentary I make, but to me, I don't think, when I really look at the boys, I don't think they really make fun of Republicans at all. Not real Republicans. I think more they make fun of those extremist MAGA nut jobs. Like, they make more fun of the extremists on that side. I don't think they at all make fun of like actual traditional historical Republicans. I don't see any of that. I see them making fun of the more extremists in that area. But again, to be fair, they have taken shots at all sides, but you have to acknowledge they've taken more shots at one side over the other. So I acknowledge that. I don't think that's a mistaken. I don't think that's a mistaken observation on their part. All right, next up, Suthius writes, after Cersei turning Tiamat completely into stone, I'm curious to see what sort of resources the people of Earth could extract and would fight over. Well, I mean, that raises a lot of questions though, right? Because there's not one type of stone. What exactly did she turn him into? And did she turn him completely into that? Or is there still a lot of stuff in the center of Tiamat that's now dead, but still there and in its original form? Or did she, in turning Tiamat into stone, was that actually like an exotic mineral on the surface that only could have been found in some distant planet? Or was it an Earth-based thing? I don't know. So, and by the way, we don't know that the people of Earth are trying to mine stuff out of Tiamat Island. It could be that just that's where the conflict is happening. There's a lot of stuff we don't know, so let's not make any assumptions quite yet, but I am curious to find out, Suthius. All right. Suthius again writes, I've come to a conclusion that human anatomy in the boys universe is the same anatomy as the Thing alien. Bodies just be looking like string cheese. I'm telling you what, every time in the boys, somebody gets blown up or ripped apart or torn into shreds, they always come up with some new unique way of having guts exploding out. It's gruesome, but it's also kind of funny the way that they do it. All right. Next up, John Redcorn writes, it probably won't happen, but I would love to see a Bad Boys / Axel F crossover movie. Will, Martin, and Eddie together would be hilariously awesome. You know what? Somebody else wrote that in a little while ago, John, and I actually completely disagree. Why? Because they're too similar. It's just too similar. Like Will's character and attitude and whatever are on the same end of the spectrum as, say, Axel's humor and whatever. And so I think you actually need a little bit of contrast. If you're going to do like a matchup like that, I think you need actually a little bit of contrast rather than getting characters that are just so too similar to each other and kind of just putting them together. I think you need something that's a little more contrasty. So look, if they did a Bad Boys Beverly Hills Cop crossover, would I watch it? Of course I would watch it. I mean, who wouldn't? Of course I would. But would I think it's a good idea? I would actually think, no, I don't think it's a good idea. We'll see. Next up, the Huffington, or the Hunt for Gollum instead of Gollum. Hey, John, actually work in finance. Nice. And love personal finance. I know you are retiring early. Do you focus more on index funds or do you purchase individual stocks? I do not purchase individual stocks. I mainly focus my stuff on ETFs. So for those of you, I'll give you, it's open mic. This is more casual. I'll give you guys a little bit of insight here. So a bunch of years ago, I've always been very good at saving my money. I'm actually thinking about doing a video sometime about my personal approach to money management. Not that my approach is the right approach, just the way I do it. And maybe doing a video about here's how I do it. I'm sure some of it's really smart. I'm sure some of it's really dumb. But I've always been very, very good with my money. Like when I was very young, like in my late teens, early 20s. I always decided a couple things. Here's the number one rule. Some of you have heard me say this. This is my number one financial rule. If you want to make sure you're always in decent financial shape, here's my number one rule. Never buy things you can't afford. Now, that may sound simple, but by me saying never buy things you can't afford, here's what I mean. I've never, ever buy things on credit card. And I never, ever buy anything on a payment plan. Since I was in my early 20s, my financial rule for myself is if I can't pull out my checkbook, my wallet right now and pay for this right now, then that means I can't afford it. And I'll wait. And I did that with my cars. My first car that I bought for like $600 because that's what I could afford. John, you could have done a payment plan. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not saying payment plans are bad, but I said for me, my rule for myself was if I can't straight up pay for it, that means I can't afford it. So just wait. So that's the way I did it. You know, when I came to the United States, I drove this older Pontiac Sunfire. Remember those cars? I used to like my Pontiac Sunfire. But I remember it took me like 6 or 7 years of saving up, and I bought my Pontiac Sunfire, and I got it used, and I think I bought it for like 11,000 Canadian dollars or something, right? Took me years of saving up, but I bought it. Then I had it for a couple of years. I drove it when I moved to LA. And when that car died, I started driving a 20-year-old hand-me-down junker that I put about $1,000 into to make sure it could keep running. And then I drove that for another 10 years. And then after another 10 years of saving and putting a little bit aside and a little bit aside, a little bit aside, a little bit aside, I bought my Toyota CHR. And I loved it. So I bought my Toyota CHR, and then like 2 years after that, when there was a car shortage, I was able to sell my CHR back to the dealership for more money than what I bought it for, and then I used that money to buy myself a Tesla. And all that was made possible, not because I'm rich. All that was made possible because I have a personal financial rule for myself that I've had since my early 20s. If I can't buy something straight up without a credit card and without payment plans, that means I can't afford it. Don't buy it yet. Keep waiting, keep saving, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, all that. So I've always been really good at saving my money. And I always live well below my means, all that kind of stuff. So a number of years ago, I decided, when I started to first think about my retirement, it's going back a bunch of years ago, I decided, well, instead of my money just sitting in my bank account, doing nothing, it's time to start investing. And I didn't invest in Bitcoin or anything like that. So I started investing in some stocks, but once ETFs started to become more prominent a number of years ago, I really started buying into ETFs. Now, for those of you who don't know what an ETF is, I am by no means a financial expert, okay? I am in no way a financial expert. But an ETF, I believe ETFs, people who know in the live chat, or the hunt for Gollum, if just an ETF, I believe stands for exchange traded fund. What that is, it's like a fund that is made up of many individual stocks, right? It's one fund, but it's made up of many individual stocks, and it's managed by a financial institution. So I really started pouring a lot of my money into what's called dividend heavy ETFs. And what that means is I buy a certain amount of shares in an ETF, and as the value goes up, I make money. But I also buy ETFs that pay a dividend. That means as the stock goes up, I make money. That's great. But just by owning the stock, they pay me, I don't know how to define a dividend, but they pay me. So let's say, for example, I say, if you give me $100, I'll pay you a 5% dividend. That means every year I give you 5% of $100. $5. Here you go. Here's $5. Just for investing in me, every year I give you $5. So if you had given me $1,000, I would be giving you $50. If you had given me $10,000, I'd be giving you $500. If you give me $100,000 at the end of every year, I give you $5,000, right? So on and so forth. So I put I started buying a lot of ETFs, both in Charles Schwab and in JP Morgan. And my goal is to have enough invested that every month, not every year, but every month, I get $5,000 in dividends. So my stock is still there and is still going up. I still own all my shares. I'm just talking about my dividends. So that's my target, is to get to a point where I'm making $5,000 a month in dividends. So that's has been my approach. I am well on my way. Again, I've been spending years putting this money aside, and by investing it, my money has just been growing. I think I've been getting with dividends and the stock appreciation, I think I've been getting nearly 20% a year. I think when maybe like 17, maybe close to like 17. I've been really lucky. So between my stock appreciation and my dividends, I think I've been making like 17% a year. So even without putting more money into my investments, and I have continued to put money into my investments, but even without it, my investment portfolio just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And then the more money my portfolio is worth, the more dividends I get, and it becomes a snowball effect. So anyway, sorry, I'm very obsessed with my personal finances. I don't talk about it much on the show, but I'm very, very, very heavily invested in my personal finances and managing my money and all that kind of stuff. And it's great. And just for those of you guys who are younger, remember, I'm not a financial expert. Do not take this as financial advice. I will simply tell you that I wish I had done this sooner. But for those of you who are younger, you're in a great position. Because let's say you buy $1,000 in stock, right? And let's say you make 10%. Let's say you make 5%, a 5% dividend, right? So at the end of the year, even if you don't put any more money into that stock, you don't put another dollar into that stock, you're going to get $50 at the end of the year as a dividend. But now you have $1,050. So 5% of that is going to be like $52 or whatever. It goes up, right? Well, now you have $1,102. Now you're making 5% on $1,102. So your dividend payment gets bigger. You add that to your investment. It gets bigger. And that's what's called in the financial circles a snowball effect. Your money investment just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the sooner you start, the bigger that snowball gets. And I kind of wish that I had started sooner. That's just me. I like what Mark is saying. Right now in the movie business, buy stock in popcorn buckets. You'll be rich. Yeah. So yeah, myself, I don't buy individual stocks. To me, that's a little too risky. Like for instance, I don't buy Nvidia stock. What I do own is some ETFs that Nvidia stock is a part of those ETFs. So even though I don't own Nvidia individually, when Nvidia goes up, my ETF goes up. But let's say Nvidia crashes and goes out of business tomorrow, I'm not losing all my money because my ETF has like 200 stocks in it, and Nvidia is just one of them. So even if Nvidia goes under tomorrow, I don't lose all my money. I'll take a hit, but my ETF is still solid. So that's why I do that. Anyway, sorry guys, I've spent way too much time talking about this. I'm very, very, very obsessed about my personal finances, and I never talk about it. So when somebody asked that question, I got kind of excited. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry. Forgive me. I apologize. All right. But yes, guys, invest your money. Don't spend money you don't have. Start putting money away. Put it into something that's either going to get you interest or dividends or invest or whatever. Just invest in the S&P 500. Just do that. Just go invest in VOO. Invest in the S&P 500. It goes up an average of 8 to 10% a year over the last 10 years. Just do something. Be smart with your money, guys. And the earlier you start, the better. That's all. All right. Next up. Again, sorry about all that. I got carried away. Let's see here. Casinema writes, the newest episode of The Boys was rough, but thankfully by the end, Kimiko and Frenchie saw the truth. But yeah, man, I love this episode of The Boys. What was the Spider-Man character's name again? Silk Sprayer. Does anybody remember that? Oh, I felt kind of bad for that dude. Oh, that poor guy. Web Weaver. That was his name. Michael Robert was the first one to let me know. Yes, Web Weaver. Oh, I felt so bad for Web Weaver. That nasty, nasty little guy. All right. Next up, Lori writes, have you seen the Brad Pitt in his F1 racing suit? Oh my God. Listen, I got to say, I still think it was a mistake to put out the trailer for F1 this early. Like, what was the point? But I really did like that trailer. I really liked the trailer. I thought it was quite good. Again, it was really good trailer for a first trailer. Doesn't give us anything about the plot or anything like that. That can come in a second and third trailer. But I thought it felt really intense. It looked pretty good. All right, Jerome writes, do you think Sister Sage lied? Why do you think Sister Sage lied about A-Train? I think she lied about A-Train because she knew Homelander and the rest of them wouldn't be able to act. She believed, like, she had to have A-Train believe that they weren't onto him. And she believed that if Homelander knew, he wouldn't be able to hide the fact that he knew. So Sister Sage was playing chess, and I think that's why she kept it from Homelander. All right. Big Mouth Stan writes, two things we learned is that Sage always knew A-Train was the leak. And the most surprising revelation is that Homelander truly loved him as a brother. And that's why he cried finding out that he was the leak. I don't think so. I don't think Homelander loves anybody except for maybe Ryan. I don't think he loves anybody. If there was any other member of the Seven that he truly trusted and felt any kind of brotherhood with, it was Noir. Right? That was apparent last year, and he still killed Noir. But I think it was more just, again, he's been betrayed. I think the reason he cried and was so upset is because even somebody he thought was loyal to him betrayed him. And that's been happening a lot to him, right? So, yeah, I don't think he was weeping and crying because, oh, I loved A-Train. No, I think that was more of an issue of, I've been double-crossed and betrayed again. And I personally think that's why he was so upset. Even a member, again, Maeve, Starlight, whatever, he's Noir, like everybody he thinks he can trust at some point turns on him, and A-Train was just the next. And he really thought A-Train was an obedient little puppy, and even he betrayed him. So I think that's why he was that upset. Let's see here. Next up, John Redcorn writes, early box office tracking for Borderlands is 10 to 20 million opening. That's horrible, but I can't say I'm too surprised. Thoughts? I'm not surprised at all. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Look, I am a big fan of many of the people in the movie and Eli Roth. And I'm a big fan of Eli Roth. Like, I really like Eli Roth. He's been one of my favorite directors to sit down and talk with. I've had a number of occasions that I did that with him. I really like him. I like his approach to film. I don't love every single one of his movies, but I love his approach to making movies. But let's call it what it is. Borderlands, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. So I would be surprised if it made more than 25 million. I know it's projecting 10 to 20. I still think 25 could be possible, but if it was anything over 25, I would be surprised because again, it just doesn't look good. So unless they come out with some real major marketing, that shows us something we haven't seen before, I don't know that it's going to get much better. And again, I say this as a fan of Eli Roth and a lot of the people involved, but all right. Casinema writes, I really hope the rumor about Kumail Nanjiani playing Booster Gold is true. He'd be absolutely perfect for the character. I have not heard that rumor. I'd be down for Kumail Nanjiani playing, because when you look at, but here's the problem with it though. Here's the problem. I think he would come across too much like, what's his character in Eternals? Kingo? Is that the name of his character in Eternals? I think it's Kingo. Anyway, I think he would come across too much like Kingo. Right? So on the one hand, I think he would kind of be great for Booster Gold because we've seen him have that same kind of, some of those same personality traits in Kingo. And I think it would come across great in a Booster Gold. But at the same time, that could be its weakness, that it might be just too much like that character. So listen, I love Kumail Nanjiani as a performer. I think I would lean away though, just because of that. It would be too similar, I think. So for that, I would lean away from it, but I wouldn't complain if he got it. All right. Robert writes, I can see David Hasselhoff's Nick Fury showing up in Deadpool 3. I could see that for a quick scene, and Wade's like, nope, not that Fury. David was in Guardians 2, so maybe. Yeah, they also did that special with him. I could see that. By the way, should I do one of those lame YouTube manipulation things where I say, tell you what, guys, if I get 1,500 likes on this video, I have found out about another major actor who is appearing in Deadpool and Wolverine. And I'm trying to decide if I should tell people who it is and what it is. But I have found out for fact, a major performer, a major actor, showing up in Deadpool and Wolverine. Not a huge role, really more of a glorified cameo. And it is one that had been now there have been a million speculations about it. But I will say this one actor's appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine is one that has been one of the million that had been speculated by some people. Not a super prominent one, but it's one that's been speculated by some people. And if I get 1,500 likes on this video, on the next episode of the John Campea Show, I'll let you know who it is. But yeah, for now, I'm going to kind of play it close to the vest right now, but it's going to make people very happy. I'll just say that. It's going to make people very happy. All right. But I like the David Hasselhoff one. I think that would be kind of cool if David Hasselhoff popped in as Nick Fury. All right. Robert also writes, the Rust incident reminds me of a Psych episode. On a movie set, someone got stabbed with a real knife instead of a prop one, filmed in 2008. Well, I mean, listen, but before 2008, there was, of course, Brandon Lee on set of The Crow, who died as a result of a prop gun firing. Right? I mean, that was long before 2008. So this wasn't real life imitating art in Psych. That was art, Psych, imitating art in a way, because the same thing had kind of happened to Brandon Lee. All right. By the way, everybody keeps telling me about Psych. Everybody keeps saying Psych was a really good show. I've never seen it, but a lot of people keep telling me I should give it a shot. Maybe I will at some point. All right. Thanks for that, Robert. Christopher Brickner writes, 1 of 2. When I mentioned Lucasfilm waiting too long to do a new Jedi Order film, I meant me specifically. Oh, I see. It doesn't matter if it's Rey or not. I don't care. Part 2. Lucasfilm should still do it, though. I'm not the entire audience. There's likely many people who want and will see a new Jedi Order film. That's great. I just won't be one of them. Oh, sure you will. Yep, you will 100% go. I mean, that's cool. You can say you won't, my brother. You can say you won't, but you and I both know you will, especially if the reviews are good and people say it's a good movie. I mean, that's a huge asterisk, but still, if people are saying this is really good. And by the way, New Jedi Order should not be a new movie. New Jedi Order should be the new direction, I think, of Star Wars. Right? It should be the new New Jedi Order is not a single shot movie. A New Jedi Order this is the new path of Star Wars that kind of focuses on, and not only ever just about Jedi, but that's the new era that Star Wars should be in, the era of the New Jedi Order. So it shouldn't just be a single new movie. It should be a new direction. And you know, you'll go see it. You 100% know you'll go see it. Like me, like I was saying a little bit earlier, somebody was asking, should they do a Bad Boys and Beverly Hills Cop crossover? I'm like, no, that's a bad idea. But come on, I'll go see it. I mean, I think it's a bad idea, but I'll go see it. But if a new Star Wars movie comes out about a new Jedi Order and you start hearing word of mouth from people saying it's really good, you'll go check it out. Come on. That doesn't mean you can think it's a good idea. Like, I would go see Beverly Hills Cop Bad Boys. Oh no, you'd call that Beverly Hills Bad Boys. That's what that crossover movie would be called, Beverly Hills Bad Boys. Anyway, I think it's a bad idea. I don't think they should do it, but I would go see it. And I think you'd be the same way with the New Jedi Order. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. All right, Beverly Hills Bad Boys. You're welcome, Hollywood. I just gave you your title. All right, Mega Red writes, one of something. Hey, John, I wrote yesterday about being 26 with a 34-year-old woman. Oh, yeah, that's nothing. That's a nothing age difference. Thanks for the great advice. Unfortunately, after the show, turns out she was hanging out with an ex she'd been transparent about being friends with her ex, but I wasn't expecting so much so to still go over and watch movies and drink together. I told her how that made me uncomfortable, and we're meeting later to talk about it. I found out after the fact, while I want to believe no funny business happened, I don't see why start a relationship with someone who not only hangs with X, but isn't completely transparent. Listen, how do I put this? There is nothing wrong. John Campea, Love Doctor, now in session. There is nothing wrong if you are uncomfortable with that, especially if you're in the beginning stages of a relationship. And if you're that uncomfortable with it, don't be in the relationship. It's just that simple. If you can live with it and you trust her, then fine. Then that's fine. But if you don't trust her that much, then don't be in the relationship. It's honestly, my friend, it's not rocket science, right? Who cares? It's a relatively new relationships. Relationships come and go. If you're the type of person that's like here's the thing, right? I don't know if I should share this or not. Okay, I'll tell you half of this story, but like we're all wired individually, right? So this one time, number of years ago, this is a good bunch of years ago, Ann and I, with a couple of friends, were in a club in Las Vegas, and Ann goes to get a drink. And I'm still over here with my friends because I never go to a club unless we get a private table because I'm so socially awkward. I don't want to stand in the middle of 5,500 other people doing this. I need to have my own space. So it's not because I'm a roller or a baller or anything like that. If I do go to a club, I got to have a private table because that's the only way I feel comfortable. Anyway, that's more of a me deficiency than anything else. So we're sitting there with my friends, and Ann walks over to the bar, even though we got bottle service, but she had something specific she wanted. So she walks over and goes to the bar, right? And as Ann often does, she looked stunning. So Ann goes to the bar, and as she's coming back, wading through the people, she gets stopped by a guy who starts talking her up. So the guy starts talking her up, and is, as always, is very friendly, right? And I can't hear the conversation back over. And one of my buddies goes, are you okay with that? You want to keep your eye on that? I'm like, what? Is he acting inappropriately? He's like, no. I'm like, then what's the problem? He goes, you don't mind that some guy's going up to your wife and hitting on your wife? I'm like, why would I mind? Like, I trust Ann. I know Ann's not doing anything, but that guy doesn't know she's with me. Like, why would I get mad at that guy? He doesn't know she's with me. As far as that guy knows, there's this cute single woman walking, just got a drink from a bar and is walking through, and he decided to go up and take a shot. I'm not going to hold that against him. I would do the same thing if I was in his, and now as long as he's acting appropriately, everything's cool, right? Everything's fine. And so sure enough, Anne wrapped up her conversation and I saw her point over to our table like, oh, I'm married. I'm over here. Have a great night. And everything was cool. So like, but the people like, oh, you weren't mad that some guy was hitting on your wife? It's like, if he knew she was my wife and he's hitting on her, yeah, then we'd have issues. But that he just saw a pretty girl, went up and hit on her. That's what I would have done. No problem. It's all good, right? But we're all wired differently, right? Certain guys would have felt upset about that. That's fine too. Certain guys are completely comfortable with that. That's me. You may be okay with a girl, like, especially in a new relationship, you might be okay with that she's hanging out with an ex, but maybe you're like, hey, we haven't been in a relationship long enough. I don't know if I can trust you. So maybe you're not. It's all fine too. It's all fine too. Now, I won't tell you the second half of that story. Won't tell you the second half of the story. Yeah. So, or should I tell you the second half? No, I won't tell you the second half of the story. I'll just leave it at that. All right. Anyway, whatever you do, Mega Red, listen, it's dating, man. If it's early in the relationship, I wouldn't sweat too much about it. Just move on. Just move on. If it's making you uncomfortable, just move on. All right. Next up, Christopher Brickner. Oh, we already got that. That was part 2 of Christopher's message. All right. Mega Red. Oh, this is a 4th part. And a 5th part. Okay, well, I'll just read through this quick. Mega Red writes, part 4. As to what level? A simple heads up beforehand would have been wonder. She's very apologetic, but I don't want to deal with that kind of baggage this early in a relationship such as life. Thanks for all the great advice. Going to have game night with friends. That's always a good thing to do. To get my mind off things. Appreciate the John Campea Show community for always providing great laughs and insight. And Long Legs tomorrow. Pumped. Yeah, I'm going to go see Long Legs this week too. I'm very excited about it. And again, if it's early in the relationship, don't even worry about it. Move on. All right. Next up, and I think this is our last question before we'll take a break here. Jerome writes, do you think Sage's plan is to frame Starlight for assassinating Singer? And what do you think Sage does next after Homelander fired her? All I know is this, and this was a big thing because one of the big flaws of Homelander and one of his big weaknesses as an invincible character is his hubris, right? That is his hubris. Sage is literally the smartest person in the world. You want that on your team. And you should be wise enough to know you should be listening to her. But he's easily manipulated. His whole life, he's been manipulated. Whether it was by Madeline Stillwell, whether it was by Stormfront, whether it was by Vought as a whole, whether it was by the early scientists, whether it was by whatever. Homelander is manipulatable. And now Firecracker is manipulating him. So I don't know what ultimately Sage is going to do now. All I know is this. She's not the kind of character that I would want to piss off. Pissing off the smartest person in the world seems like a bad idea. It seems like a bad idea. So, what she does next, I'm not really sure. All right, I was wrong. We have one more to do before we take a quick little break here. This one comes to us from Mike Vetter, who writes, One great thing about the HBO Harry Potter series is we probably won't have to wait 2 years per season. That's true. That's a great point, Mike. They can't take too long because those kids are going to grow up really fast. 100%. But now here's the difference though. And I think you're absolutely right. We are going to get that, unlike this nonsense in streaming where you got to wait 1.5 years, 2 years, sometimes 3 years in between seasons. That won't happen with this Harry Potter series. One of the main reasons we won't have to do that is because unlike other streaming shows where they know they don't want them to go beyond 2 or 3 seasons, or they do 1 season, they don't know if they're going to get a second season, so they can't plan in advance to do a second season, right? HBO and Warner is completely committed to this Harry Potter series. They're completely committed to it. So they already know their green light for season 2 and probably already greenlit for season 3. So they're going to be going to production, make the show, and they already have everybody under contract. They already have everybody with their schedules. Then they'll take a couple of months off in between seasons, then go back into production, and we are going to get a season every year. That is one of the great things about this series. Now, whether the show turns out well or not, we'll have to see. They just went out and got the producers and showrunners for Game of Thrones and Succession and Ozark. So it's like, holy crap, they got some serious creative firepower now behind the scenes. They're clearly all in on this. And yeah, I think you're right. We're going to get 1 season every year, I think, and that's going to be really great. All right, guys. We are got a whole bunch of questions still to get to. Just so you know, I'm going to be turning off the super chats in just a moment. So if you do have another thought, comment, or question, observation, theory, whatever you want to fire in, do it like within the next 30 seconds or so, because then I'm going to turn off the super chats. And we'll get to the remainder of the questions that we have here. But before we do, we're going to take a quick moment and thank a couple of sponsors of today's episode. Keeping your meat neat, our friends over at Manscaped and the good folks doing great work over at BetterHelp. Guys, we want to take a second and thank a sponsor of today's episode, Manscaped. Sizzle alert, this summer, let the only thing that's smoking at your barbecue be the grill, not your grooming game. Get ready for the ultimate cookout season with Manscaped. Whether you're flipping burgers or cannonballing into the pool, make sure your meat looks neat with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. Head to manscaped.com and use the code CAMPEA for 20% off and free shipping. Now, come on, guys, if you're like me, you used to do your grooming the old barbaric way. You know, using the clippers on your electric shaver, it never did a good job and always left me screaming out several profanities. So like me, you know that you need the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is perfect for achieving that crisp, clean, and confident look for your barbecues and beach days. The Weed Whacker 2.0, guys, keep your ears and nose as tidy as your hedges next door with our Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer. And you get Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion, Crop Preserver, Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant, and Boxers 2.0, the ultimate supplement to those hot summer days, equipped with the signature jewel pouch to protect your meatballs wherever the heat takes you. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code CAMPEA at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use that code CAMPEA. Manscaped, the perfect way to get your patties sizzling hot this summer. We want to thank a sponsor of today's episode, BetterHelp. You know, guys, it's one of the most unfortunate human tendencies that we have to try to compare our life to others. And social media plays a big part of that. Comparison is like the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives because on the surface, it might look like they have it all together on their Instagram or YouTube, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. Give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Campea today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Manscaped and BetterHelp for sponsoring today's episode. All right, guys, with that down, let's get back over to your questions here, shall we? We're going to pick things up here with Jerome, who writes, why did... Am I on the right show? I am on the right show. Why did Sage sleep with Deep and Black Noir? because she likes sex. I mean, it seems like a good reason to me. Black, noir, and deep are good-looking dudes. She likes sex. She knew she could manipulate them for it whenever she wanted it, so she was able to do that. I think a lot of characters would do the same. That's why. All right. Next up, Isaac Martinez writes, from the director who made Beasts, Everest, and Two Guns, I was surprised he made the movie Torch. Saw it yesterday and was a beautiful movie. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what we're talking about. Or Touch. I'll just be straight up. I mean, I could lie to you, Isaac, and say, oh yeah, Touch, but I don't know what we're talking about, unfortunately. So I'm not familiar with that film, but thanks for putting on people's radars. All right. Jerome writes, opinion of the death of Rhaenys in House of the Dragon. Killed me. Totally killed me. I think she might've been my favorite character in the show. Absolutely loved Rhaenys' character right from the beginning of season 1, but it was a great death. And you know what they say? I heard this saying in chess that it's not really a game until important pieces start coming off the board. I can't remember who said that, but I remember hearing, it was in Queen of Cotway or Queen's Gambit or something. But I remember somebody saying it's not really a game until important pieces start coming off the board. Well, you know what? In House of the Dragon, it's a game now because a real important piece just came off the board. And I think she's a great character, but her death was meaningful and it had great narrative purpose. So even though I feel like it sucks that she's not on the show anymore, it was a wonderful scene, greatly done, and important pieces are now starting to come off the board. It's a game now. All right. Isaac Martinez writes, happy that I'm going to Barnes & Noble today. Ann and I were just in a Barnes & Noble last night to buy some Criterion movies, which is 50% off. Who would have thought Christmas came twice this year? Get them while you can. If you're into the physical media stuff, get it while you can because you know it's probably not going to be lasting. By the way, I just want to, speaking of last night, a quick shout out just in case he's watching. So Ann and I last night, we went out for the evening and we decided to go to this mall out in Chino Hills, this outdoor mall where we went to Barnes & Noble and we went to a couple of cool places. And there was a Chili's right there. So Ann and I go in for dinner to Chili's. And every once in a while when we go into restaurants, we'll have a John Campea Show viewer there and come over and talk to us, say hi. But it was really, really neat. So we're sitting there talking to each other at our table. And I could see out of the corner of my eye, the waiter come up. And it's like, hi, can I get you guys anything? And I look up at him, and our waiter's name was Noah. So Noah, if you're watching. And Noah jumped back and was like, I'm like, what? I'm like, what's wrong? And he goes, I was literally just watching your show 20 minutes ago. And so Noah came over, a viewer of our show. He might be in the live chat here somewhere. I'm not really sure. But very, very nice and kind, nice guy. So I had a chance to meet him and stuff like that. So hello to Noah. That's what we were doing last night. I love going into Barnes & Noble. I do. I love books. I love looking at all the books. I like looking at even all the old school magazines. I like looking at those. They've got kind of a cool little toy section. I love going into their games section. I really like going to Barnes & Noble. All right. Next up, Jackson writes, hey, John, think back to your life/career. To your biggest failures and successes, which taught you more and helped you become the person you are today. While it is true that, in the words of Master Yoda, that, failure is our greatest teacher. Failure is a great teacher. I think the thing I learned, one of my successes that I learned a lot from was earlier in my career, I took a risk on myself. I decided to bet on myself. I won't go into the specific details of it, but I decided to bet on myself earlier in my career and it worked out and I had a success from it. And that really taught me for the rest of my career to always be willing to bet on myself. And that really served me well years later when I was at Collider and I knew I wasn't happy and I had the risk of leaving, because listen, I was making 6 figures at Collider. I was making a good 6-figure salary at Collider. And I knew that if I left Collider to just go and do my own YouTube channel, I remember Ann and I went out to dinner to a restaurant called BJ's. We went to dinner to BJ's in Burbank, California. And we sat down at BJ's. And I remember we were talking about it, and I said, honestly, I think I'm going to make about $200 a month to start. Like if I switch over, if I leave this 6-figure salary corporate job at Collider and I go out on my own, I brought my iPad with me with the Excel sheet and going over our personal finances. I'm like, I think to start, I'll probably be making about $200 a month. And maybe I can grow it and get bigger from there, but it's a risk. But because earlier in my career and earlier in my life, I learned a lesson that betting on myself was, for me, the right thing to do. It gave me the confidence, because I had learned that lesson earlier. You know what? I am going to bet on myself. I'm going to put my money on the idea that I can succeed. And so I made that decision to do that. And I left, and it's worked out, thankfully. As far as failures go, I want to be careful how I say this, because I don't want to sound like I'm trying to diminish or trash on anybody individually. I think when I told AMC that I was leaving, and I decided to leave AMC, I had a number of options open to me, because we had great success at AMC. We really started something from the ground up and built something that was really cool. And I had, because of that, when I decided to leave AMC, I had a number of really interesting opportunities presented to me. And I kind of decided on this one, and I won't say what it was, but I had decided on this one opportunity, and Ann and I had made a decision that we think this one opportunity is going to be the best for me, and I'm going to do this and that and whatever. Now, before I accepted the job, though, I got contacted by somebody at Collider and said, we think it would be great if you came over and started a video division over at Collider. I agreed to do that under a very specific set of circumstances and a very specific set of rules. And I put it in writing. I laid out the rules that if I were to come over there and do this, we have to agree on this, 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 and this. And there was agreement. So it was great. So I went over to Collider. It was a mistake. Don't get me wrong. There's much, much, much about my time at Collider that I did enjoy very much. And we certainly had some successes, some definite successes at Collider. Absolutely. And I had some very good times there, worked with some very good people and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, agreements were violated. And I ultimately left not very happy. So to me, Collider was a failure. For myself, it was the wrong decision for me. I made the wrong decision going to Collider. That was a failure to me. The lesson I learned from that experience, because remember, I already told you what the lesson I learned from a success that I had was. The lesson I learned from that failure was, don't be so ready to trust people. Don't be so ready to trust people. listen, in life, you got to have trust, right? Absolutely you do. I'm not one of these super jagged people that I'm saying, never trust anyone. No. Don't, that is not the lesson to take away from this. That's not what I mean. But I think I was too anxious and easily ready to trust some other people because that trust got broken fairly quickly. And the lesson I took away from that was to do, whenever I was going to enter into something where I needed to be able to trust the other people, to do a lot more due diligence, to be a lot more vigilant on laying rules and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think that would be the biggest lesson I learned from a success. The being willing to bet on myself sort of thing. That was the lesson I learned there. And then the lesson from my failure is don't be too ready and overly anxious to trust people. Trust has to be a part, 100%. Just be very, very frugal. Be frugal. That's right. Think of it in terms of your money. Be frugal about how you hand out your trust. Because trust is like the most valuable thing you'll ever have in any working relationship. So treat it like it's important. Treat your trust like it's valuable and precious and important. Because if something is important and valuable and precious to you, you'll be very protective of it. So be protective of the trust you give. And be frugal about it. So I think that's the lessons I took away from a personal failure of mine. So there's that. Good question, man. I'm just answering off the wing here. I'm just winging it, telling you my answer. So hopefully you found that helpful in your particular life. Again, those are just the lessons for me. Yours will be different, but that's how I would answer that. Anyway, thanks for the question, Jackson. Appreciate that. All right. Next up, Christopher Brickner writes, it's days like today that take me back to 2020, mainly because I got COVID again. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about that, dude. That sucks. I've had friends who caught COVID, man, and it knocks them on their asses. But I mean, hey, persevere, Christopher, persevere. All right. That sucks, dude. Feel better soon, my man. All right. Jai CSC writes, well, after that episode of The Boys, I'm not sure if I'll be able to listen to Len's Steal My Sunshine without gruesome imagery popping into my head. You know, that happens. That happens. Like, for example, like that's the power of music, the right music paired with the right visual or the right story. Because even though Immigrant Song is an all-time great song just on its own, I cannot hear, like if I'm walking through a mall or walking through a casino or something like that, and I hear, like I start hearing, if I start hearing all that, right? All I can see in my head is Thor Ragnarok. That's all I can see in my head is Thor Ragnarok. That's it. It does. That song will now forever to me be the Thor Ragnarok in my head. I'm just curious in the live chat if you guys have some other things where like a song now will forever for you be connected, like Stuck in the Middle. That's right. Haunted Autumn saying Stuck in the Middle from Reservoir Dogs. Stuck in the middle with you. Right. That's always going to be there. Always going to be there. Back in Black. Are you talking about Iron Man? Oh, the Shrek one. Somebody once told me that, right? Can't hear that song ever for the rest of my life without thinking about Shrek. Never for the rest of my life be able to think about that song without thinking about Shrek. All right. Next up, we go to, that was Jai CSC. Bobby Jackson writes, John, did you hear that Comic-Con signed a 1-year extension through 2026 with San Diego, but might leave afterwards due to hotel price gouging? All right, guys. Some of you who've watched me for a long time, you know what I'm about to say, but it needs to be said. Until something is done about it, this needs to be said. San Diego Comic-Con is wonderful. It is. But it needs to move out of San Diego. It needs to move out of San Diego. Downtown San Diego is simply, for any of you who have ever been to Comic-Con, downtown San Diego is literally not built to have 120,000 people flood into it. It's just not built for that. One of the biggest examples of this is the hotels. Guys, did you know that you can't even get a hotel for Comic-Con? You have to go into a lottery. You actually have to enter yourself into a lottery and hopefully get picked out of that lottery, only to win the privilege of paying like $700 a night for a hotel room at San Diego Comic-Con. $700 to $1,500 to $2,000 a night. Why? Because downtown San Diego doesn't have anywhere near enough hotel rooms. They don't have anywhere close to enough hotel rooms. The San Diego Convention Center overall is also just too small. And I don't know if any of you who have gone to Comic-Con have tried to get a cab or tried to get an Uber and try to get anywhere near downtown, but it is a fucking circus. San Diego Comic-Con needs to move to Las Vegas. And here's why. For multiple reasons. First, I'll start with a small one. Any of you guys ever gone to Comic-Con and try to get into a restaurant anywhere to eat something? You're like in line for 45 minutes to an hour and a half just to get in anywhere to eat because there's not enough restaurants. In San Diego or in Las Vegas, they literally have 10 times the amount of restaurants. 10 times the amount of restaurants and places you can eat. Number two, Las Vegas has a much better transportation system because that's all Las Vegas does is constantly cabbing and Ubering people from here to there. They do it like clockwork. It's a perfectly well-oiled machine getting around in Las Vegas. Way better than trying to get around in San Diego. Number three. And I'm probably going to talk about all this on the John Campea Show on Monday as well, but you guys get an advanced look at this. Number three, the convention center in the convention center in Las Vegas, you can go look this up. The convention center in Las Vegas is literally 3 times bigger than the convention center in San Diego. You ever gone into the convention center on a Saturday at Comic-Con? You're literally, and you're catching everybody's Comic-Con crud and everybody freaking smells. Anyway, and I love Comic-Con, but I mean, literally, the convention center in Las Vegas is literally 3 times the size. Way bigger. But most importantly, Las Vegas has 10 times the hotel rooms. If you think Comic-Con is big, CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, that can bring in like 150 to 200,000 people into town, right? They had the Super Bowl. They did the NFL draft. The thing about Las Vegas is Las Vegas can have 300,000 people come into town and not even blink. I remember I went to Las Vegas for CES. That was like 175,000 people went to CES. But you never would even known anything was going on. It was just business as normal in Las Vegas. And my hotel room was like $100 a night. So you've got 10 times the amount of hotel rooms, much better transportation, way more places to eat. So eating is going to be a lot easier. pardon me, you've got a convention center that's 3 times the size. And you've got a place like T-Mobile Arena. You've got Allegiant Stadium. You can have your big Hall H stuff in there that you could fit. Everybody who wants to go will be able to go. There is simply no need and no reason to keep the main Comic-Con in San Diego anymore. And I say this as somebody who loves San Diego. I love that town. And I love San Diego Comic-Con. But by every single metric, there is not a single advantage that San Diego has over Las Vegas as far as hosting a huge convention like Comic-Con. So, and by the way, Haunted just put in a really great point too. Flight options too. You can fly direct to Vegas from almost every butt-hick town in the world. Canada, US, Mexico, Europe, whatever. Almost every little bum-hick airport with one strip on it will have a direct flight to Las Vegas. So easy to get to Las Vegas. It's like Rome, right? All roads lead to Rome. Every airport in the world has at least one direct flight to Las Vegas. And for the company, this is a good point, Niles. For the company, huge tax incentives to be in Las Vegas. Huge tax incentives to be in. Like, there is literally no reason not to move it to Las Vegas. They 100% should. I understand tradition. San Diego has beautiful weather. I understand all of that. But for the sake and the health of the con, you got to move this thing to Vegas. You 100% need to move to Vegas, because this whole thing about having to literally spend $3,000 to $4,000 just for your hotels, if you're lucky enough to win a lottery, and then you do spend all that money and go to San Diego for it and never get into Hall H to watch the big important panels, because out of the 120,000 people that go, only 6,000 of them, like 5% of the people that go will get to actually go into and be a part of Hall H. Come on, this is fucking ridiculous. It's time to move this thing out of San Diego. They should have done it years ago. Anyway, sorry. I get ranty when I start talking about that. I apologize. All right. Bobby Jackson writes in again. If Comic-Con stays in San Diego and decided to utilize Petco Park for Hall H presentations, what do you think would be the best way to deal with a light coming in from sky and cell phone recordings? Well, I mean, so one of the things I've said about San Diego is, like, again, the biggest problem with Comic-Con is that the biggest, most important events, Hall H, can only hold 5% of the people going. When literally right across the street, for any of you guys who've been to Comic-Con, you know this, right across, like literally right across the street is Petco Field, right? So I've been saying forever, hold your Hall H panels there. That's where you have your Hall H panels. How do you deal with cell phone recordings? The same way you do with Hall H. You have people check phones. Have people check phones, have monitors in every section to make sure people aren't pulling out their phones or recording. Take away their CinemaCon badge or their Comic-Con badge if you're caught pulling out your phone during a presentation. Same way you do, just on a larger scale. With light, there are definitely projection systems you can do in broad daylight. I remember Ann and I went to a drive-in during COVID that they actually had screenings in the middle of the day, and the projector they used, it was great. It was perfect. So there are ways to do that. Again, that is one, but that only solves one of the issues. You still have food, transportation, hotels, convention center size. You still have all those problems too. So again, they should have done the Petco Park thing a long time ago, but even if they did that, there's still other problems. All right. John Redcorn says, chances Deadpool appears at the Kids' Choice Awards. Is that coming up? The Kids' Choice Awards? Man, I don't know. I think Disney would face a lot of backlash if they specifically tried to promote Deadpool specifically to kids, which is an R-rated film. I think Marvel would face some backlash for that. But it might be worth it. It might be worth it. I don't know. I'd say a 10% chance. I'm not going to go any higher than 10%. I'll say 10% chance that Deadpool makes an appearance at the Kids' Choice Awards. It'd be really funny if he did, though. And especially if if Ryan Reynolds dressed as Deadpool shows up and gives this impassioned speech, kids, tell your mom and dad they got to take you to come see Deadpool and Wolverine, and really tells kids to bug their parents to take them to it. Personally, I think it would be hilarious. I think it would be really hilarious. All right. Christopher Brickner writes, Twister's reviews are pretty good so far on Rotten Tomatoes. I haven't seen it yet. Let me go over and take a peek here at Twister's Rotten Tomatoes. What is there? I saw the first reactions look pretty good. So as of right now, Twister's on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't see a score. Oh, there it is, 79%. Nice. 79%. That's actually pretty good. That's better than I thought. Listen, if you'd asked me 3 months ago what I thought the Rotten Tomatoes score of Twisters would be, I probably would have said somewhere around 45, but 79, that's actually pretty good. Hopefully it's good. I've got my tickets for it already. All right. Next up, we have Bobby Jackson again, who writes, been thinking about Tiamat and which project since Eternals would have been a good place to talk about it besides She-Hulk, and can't think of one. Can you think of one? Maybe Multiverse of Madness. Here's the thing. It's not that Tiamat coming out of the Indian Ocean needs to be a plot point, but it should at least be acknowledged. Even in a throwaway line of dialogue, like the world's crazy right now. They have people, half the population disappearing, some giant celestial monster coming out of the ocean, like just something like that. Something that acknowledges this major change on the planet has happened. And the fact that it's been completely overlooked and ignored has been really kind of weird. All right. But like I'm saying, Bobby, it didn't need to be a specific plot point to a movie, just something that shows that it's acknowledged. All right. Cookie writes, I'm rewatching all the Fox X-Men, Wolverine, and Deadpool films yesterday. Nice. To the 24th of July, ready for Deadpool 3. For me, it's on the 25th. I don't know that I can watch X-Men Origins Wolverine again. I don't know that I could see that again. Although that is the one that had Taylor Kitsch as Gambit. Listen, that's who was playing Gambit, right? Taylor Kitsch. I think Taylor Kitsch could have been a great Gambit. I really think he could have been a great Gambit. I think if he had gotten if they had introduced him in a better movie and he'd been given more of a shot, I really do think Taylor Kitsch could have been a really, really good Gambit. By the way, that was also the movie that one of my heroes, Kid Poker, the good Canadian kid, greatest poker player in the world, Daniel Negreanu, was also made an appearance in X-Men Origins Wolverine, of course, playing poker. But if you guys go back and watch that scene again, you'll see Daniel Negreanu, greatest poker player in the world, good Canadian kid, Kid Poker, does a quick cameo in that, which is really, but yeah, I thought Taylor Kitsch could have been a good one. I think he could have been a good one. All right. Next up, Brandon Collins writes, if you call yourself a witness to answer for your office concealing evidence and your co-counsel quits, you should probably look for a new job. I'm so glad you brought that up, Brandon, because there is something that happened. I'm sure it's happened before. I'm sure it has. I've just never seen it. The prosecutor literally called themselves as a witness. I don't ever, in the Alec Baldwin situation, I don't ever remember that happening before. But so you're hiding evidence, you call yourself as a witness, and your co-prosecution quits on you. None of that is a good sign. I mean, this whole Alec Baldwin trial thing has been a circus. It's been an absolute circus. It never should have gone to trial in the first place. And ultimately, justice prevailed. But yeah, man, I honestly think this person should be disbarred. But whatever. I'm sure there's more to it that I don't know. All right. Disgraceful Entertainment writes, the prosecutor who made the opening statement removed herself from the case. Yes, when she found out that what her co-prosecutors did. Yeah. So Not only did they keep it secret, they kept it secret from the other prosecutors too. And when the other prosecutors found out, wait a minute, they found the live ammunition and you concealed it? We're gone. We're out. Like even their own co-prosecutors left. It was, somebody else said in there, if Alec Baldwin was not famous, nobody would have been prosecuting. They never would have been prosecuted. Everybody would totally understand common sense. Hey, the weapons experts cleared it and declared it a 100% safe prop. It wasn't the actor's fault. Everybody would know that. Everybody would clearly know that because people aren't idiots. But because it was Alec Baldwin, ooh, big fish to fry. And then they had to cheat and conceal evidence, even concealed it from the court, from the defense, and even from their co-prosecutors, because that's the only way they even had a remote chance of winning. And they never really had a chance of winning. It's a circus, man. It's an absolute circus. All right. Next up, we've got Jay Hart writes, I heard the guilty verdict will also be overturned. Okay, so as we mentioned, the armorer, who ultimately was the one responsible for inspecting and declaring and clearing the gun and declaring it safe when it wasn't, had a live round of ammunition in it. But the armorer was tried and convicted and is now serving, I believe, an 18-month prison sentence. But because of what just happened in the Alec Baldwin case, the armorer's lawyers are now saying, well, wait a minute. There was other major evidence and it was concealed. So now the armorer's lawyer is going to be looking to get the guilty verdict overturned. Now, whether or not they're going to be able to do that, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that. But yeah, now the armorer's lawyer is saying, well, we might have to overturn her conviction if we're finding out now that the prosecution was hiding evidence. So what will happen there? I don't know, but it's going to be really interesting to keep our eyes on. All right. Next up, we got Victor Romero, who writes, AMC's Screen Unseen this Monday is a rated R 2-hour movie. What are the odds that it's Deadpool? Got my tickets just in case. All right. All right. I didn't know that. I've got to believe the chances that the Screen Unseen is actually Deadpool and Wolverine are next to zero. But I'm going to get a ticket just in case. I mean, here's the thing. Okay, look, it's so unlikely. It's so unlikely that it's Deadpool and Wolverine. But if there's even a 1% chance that it is, I think I might get my ticket just in case. I think I might get a ticket just in case it is. You know what the other one could be? Could be Alien Romulus. I don't know what the length of Alien Romulus is. So maybe it's Alien Romulus. So yeah, I think the chances that it's Deadpool and Wolverine, highly unlikely. Yeah, Unishin just said the same words I just did. Highly unlikely. But if there's even a chance that it's Deadpool and Wolverine. Oh, Cord Cutter Cam is just saying Romulus is 1 hour and 59 minutes. Okay, that's probably it then. It's probably Romulus. You know what? I want to see Alien Romulus too. Hey, listen, if the AMC Screen Unseen is Alien Romulus, I think that's a win. I think that's a big win if that's it. Anyway, well, but it's highly unlikely it's Deadpool, but I will probably get my ticket just on the rare 1% chance that maybe it is. All right. Jake Clark writes, The Crow got finished and released after Lee died. Yes, they did. So like we were talking a little bit earlier, Brandon Lee was shot and killed on set by a prop gun, but they finished the film. So in the question about whether or not they'll finish Rust, again, like I said, I think the widower of the cinematographer who died said they want to finish it. So I don't know, but I think there's a chance it does get finished. I think there is a chance. All right. Next up, we got R. Lee who writes, never thought Alec should have been charged. A law enforcement filed the live ammo found under a different case number. Prosecution knew and decided it's not relevant. Huh? No wonder the case was thrown out. Yeah. See, here's the thing. I watched this with great interest. When they got busted, when the special prosecutor got busted that they were hiding the evidence. Again, I want to set the context of this. The number one question that everybody had, the people who thought Alec Baldwin should be charged, the people who thought Alec Baldwin shouldn't be charged, the one thing we all had in common was the number one question is, how the hell did live ammunition get on set? Like that's where we're, how did live ammunition get into that gun in the first place? But how did live ammunition even get onto the set? And they found live ammunition and they hid it. So when the prosecutor got busted and the co-prosecutor found out about it and said, F you, you're on your own, and quit and left, the special prosecutor actually got up when the judge brought up the special prosecutor, say, explain yourself. How did you hide this evidence? Explain yourself. You know what the prosecutor actually said about evidence of live ammunition? You know what the prosecutor said? You can go watch this. You can find it on YouTube. Said, oh, Your Honor, it wasn't important. That's literally what the special prosecutor said to the judge. It's totally not important. Not relevant at all. Not relevant at all? The number one question we've all been asking. And you found live ammunition and you're saying it's completely irrelevant evidence? What? So the judge basically looked at her and laughed and said, we're dismissing this with prejudice. But yeah, that prosecutor literally tried to tell the judge, oh yeah, okay, yeah, so we hid that evidence, but we just thought it wasn't important. You know, it's not important evidence. Live bullets on the set of the movie, not important evidence. And yeah, the judge busted them for it. So it was wild, man. It was absolutely wild. All right, Dwayne writes, John, Canada are playing again today for the third place match for Copa. Let's hope they win. Yeah, listen, whether they win or lose, it's like when they played Argentina in the semis. It didn't matter. Canada has already way overperformed. They exceeded expectations. Nobody thought Canada would get into the quarterfinals, let alone get into the semifinals. And they did. So win or lose, totally proud of those guys. If they win, great. If they don't, it's fine. They got into the Final Four, which nobody ever thought that they would do. And yeah, it was pretty great. So go Canada, go. All right. Next up, we've got, who's next? Dwayne also writes, hey, John, who's the most famous contact on your phone? If you can say who it is. I won't say who it is. I won't say who it is. I'll just say this. I'm very, very lucky. I don't have my phone here in front of me. Some of my biggest geek out moments in my life, not best moments of my life, geek out moments of my life. Some of the best and biggest geek out moments of my life have been like when like somebody I really admire in the industry spontaneously reaches out to me. I'll give you one example. Like I don't give many, but I'll give you one example because I've mentioned this one before. But you guys know I love Bryce Dallas Howard. I'm a huge fan of Bryce Dallas Howard. I think she's a tremendous talent, and she directed on Mandalorian, and she directed the only decent episode of Boba Fett. I thought her directing was great too. And I remember on the show, I talked on the show about, my God, guys, how good of a job has Bryce Dallas Howard been doing? I was really excited about the job Bryce Dallas Howard was doing. I talked a lot about it. And out of nowhere, like Bryce Dallas Howard wrote to me just saying, it was just a very simple, polite, nice, like very, very, very nice little note just saying, hey, just thank you so much for the kind words. And I worked really hard on this and it really means a lot that, you appreciated it and blah, just want to write and say thank you for the kind words. And like, that came out of nowhere. And I'm like, first of all, I'm thinking, Bryce Dallas Howard knows I exist. And that's a super geeky thing to me. Like I geeked the hell out. Like I came the next morning, like I rushed into everybody coming into the studio. I'm like, look who wrote us. Like I was so excited about it. Yeah, I mean, that was a really big thing, but I've been very, very lucky that I've had a couple of examples of that. Some I don't share. The Bryce Dallas Howard one I shared, but yeah, very, very cool stuff. I'm trying to debate whether I should tell you about one or two of the other ones. Nah, I probably shouldn't, but I'll keep those ones to myself. But yes, I'm very lucky when that happens. I won't share who the most famous person on my phone is, but I've got a couple. But like, let's be clear. Let me be clear. All right. Just so there's no misunderstanding. While I have a few, because I've been very lucky that some have reached out to me at different times, even recently, it's not like I'm buddies with these people, right? I'm afraid sometimes there's an impression created that like, oh, me and Jason Statham, we hang out and stuff like that. It's not like I'm buddies and I go over to people's houses or they come over to mine and we hang out and watch UFC together or whatever. I don't want to give that impression. That's not the case, right? I'm at most, I've been lucky enough that there are some people who are aware of me, have maybe reached out a few times, maybe once a year I write to them as well, and they write, like, maybe, but I don't want to create the false impression that I travel in the famous circles. I go to all the finest Oscar after parties. Nowhere near. That's not reality. That's not reality at mine. I am a fucking nobody who does a little YouTube show in a little converted garage. That's what I am. I've been very lucky. I've gotten to geek out a number of times. I've got to meet a lot of very cool people, but at the end of the day, I'm a fucking nobody. And I don't say that for like false Canadian humility. I am a fucking nobody. I don't rub shoulders with these people, whatever. But yeah, I've got a few of them on my phone for little notes here and there and stuff like that, which is pretty fun. All right. Next up, we've got Skeleton writes, I'm not thrilled with the visuals / costumes on the Superman filming. I am. Much prefer Snyder's look, but Zack can't write. Maybe Zack is the better visual artist, but Gunn is the better writer. Well, here's the thing. You can see him here. I got Henry's Superman right here. I love this Superman costume. I do. I love it. It is very non-traditional. It is not really reflective of any of the comic book ones. Regardless, I know a lot of people had some issues with it. I love this costume. I love the movie. I love Henry. I love the costume. I think it's great. Now, that said, I think the new costume on Superman is wonderful. Do I prefer Henry's? Yeah. But I was going to prefer Henry's no matter what the new design looked like. But I think the new design is great because if you actually look at it, every aspect of the new Superman costume is taken from true classic Superman in the comics. You got your Kingdom Come logo. You've got your Man of Tomorrow texture. You've got your classic red underwear, even though I don't like the red underwear, but whatever. Everything is directly taken from different looks in the comic book. And I think it looks great. And remember, like a lot of people who criticize Man of Steel criticize it for being too dark, too dour, even the color palette being too desaturated and too kind of dark. James Gunn wanted to go with a brighter, a more hopeful, and that plays out visually as well. So I personally think it looks great. I really do. I prefer Henry's, but I really think the new costume looks great. And we'll see how it kind of plays out in the movie itself. All right. Thanks for sharing, Skeleton. Appreciate it, man. All right. Next up, Dwayne writes, hey, John, there's a report from Nexus Point News. Haven't heard of them. Neither have I. The Camille is booster gold. Hopefully it's true. We addressed that a little bit earlier. I love Camille Nanjiani. My problem with it is that I think it would play a little bit too much like Kingo that he's already played. So would I be against it? Not at all. Would it be my pick, even though I love Camille Nanjiani? I don't think that's the right fit for him, but that's just me. And again, unless it's coming from a real news outlet, I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. That doesn't mean it's impossible that it could be true, but I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. All right. Next up, Stargirl writes, what are your feelings with the Americans panicking that the Canadian soccer team got to the semifinals? And are you looking forward to the World Cup? You know, I'm not a big soccer fan, to be honest with you, but I love these big events. So like, I actually pay attention to the Euros and I pay attention to Copa, particularly with Canada's involved. And I always get invested in the World Cup. I mean, that is the other Super Bowl. I mean, it's like the biggest sporting event in the world. So yeah, I look forward to it. Yeah. The fact that Canada got so much further than the US did is not a good look for the American soccer program. And they just fired their coach. So they got some work to do. They definitely have, because they should have gone further. They 100% should have gone further. Let's see here. Next up, Big Mouth Stan. And this is our final super chat question of the day. Big Mouth Stan writes, Vagar is such a cool looking dragon in House of the Dragon. I think all the dragons, like Rhaenys's dragon looks awesome. Aegon's, even though it's a little bitty dragon, like Sunfire, gorgeous design. Gorgeous design. Daemon's dragon looks awesome. The classic red dragon kind of look. But Vagar is a very cool looking dragon. Like, no doubt about it, Vagar is a very cool looking dragon, no doubt. All right, guys. That does it for all the super chat questions that got sent in. Thank you to everybody who sent in those questions. Appreciate it very much. And you know what? I'm just going to take a minute or two here to take a few more questions just from the live audience. So listen, if you have a question, do me a favor. Look in the live chat right now. See how I have in capital letters, question, colon. If you have a question for me, go ahead and fire. I'm not going to answer all of them. I'm not going to answer them in order. I'm just going to handpick a couple and I'll address. But just write question, colon, and then we'll go from there. All right. So Jeremy Miller writes in, question, John, do you think Alec Baldwin will have trouble getting roles after this or even want to work on sets again? Listen, I've said this before. I'll say it again. From the moment that it happened, whether it was his fault or not, and clearly it wasn't his fault, he is never going to get over this. I remember one time I was driving through Northern Ontario and it was in the middle of the night down this highway and a little deer jumped in front, was across the road. There was nothing I could have done to avoid it, but I hit that deer. Now I stopped, looked around, the deer was gone. So whether the deer, I hope in my head the deer was fine and ran away, but I know I hit that deer. And I almost couldn't sleep for a week over a deer. I almost couldn't sleep for a week. To this day, if I really think about it, I get emotional. Like, seriously, it wasn't my fault, but now imagine, even though it wasn't his fault, the gun was still in his hand. And as unintentionally as it was, he was a cog in the machine that led to a young woman getting shot and killed. Wasn't his fault, but it doesn't matter. He's never going to get over this. He's never going to get over this. Yeah, he's never going to get over it. Yes, there will be people that will work with him again, 100%. Whether he'll want to do it again after this, I don't know. but we'll see. But if he's willing to work again, and I don't know if he ever will, I think there will definitely be people that will still absolutely work with him if he's right for that. All right. Dana White writes, what happens if Deadpool 3 doesn't deliver? It's absolutely cataclysmic for Marvel. I've said this before. I'll say it again. So much is riding on Deadpool 3. It doesn't have to be the greatest Marvel movie of all time. It doesn't have to be like that, but it's got to be good. And if it's not even good, what it does to the reputation, Marvel's reputation is already a little precarious right now because of the mediocre quality they've had lately. If Deadpool and Wolverine isn't at least good, it's cataclysmic for them. I think it's absolutely cataclysmic for them. Let's see. Jermaine King writes, do you still have your amazing gaming table? I do. Right out there. We were just talking to some people about it. Yep, we absolutely still have our gaming table. 100% we do. I'll never get rid of that thing. Let's see. Bungo writes, why have you been the #1 movie talk person for over a decade? I don't know that that's true. But you know, what I do is very different from, like, for instance, you take guys like Chris Stuckman or Jeremy Johns, who I think have been the best pure movie critics on YouTube over the past long number of years. Or even stuff like what the wonderful Greg Alba does, and the guys over at Real Rejects. Like, what all those people do is all very different from what I do, right? It's very, very different stuff that we do, the very, very different types of content. I don't know a lot of people who do what I do and do it regularly, but I certainly think I have been a trendsetter. I think that's fair to say that. You know, I created AMC Movie Talk. I created a format. I had a vision of creating sports talk style, but for movie discussion. And I was really the first guy to do that. I did that with the very first movie podcast ever done, which was called the Movie Blog Audio Edition. And I brought that to YouTube with AMC Movie Talk, and I've continued to do it. So I certainly think I have set trends. I don't know, and I certainly think I'm pretty good at my job. I think I'm good at my job. I think I'm very good at what I do. I don't think I can be successful for almost 20 years without at least being good at what I do. I don't know that I would say I'm the best, or I've been the #1 though. That being said, I think the reason I've been able to be successful is a couple of very, very key things. I think I've been able to be successful because #1, I am always honest. I have some very unpopular opinions. There have been many times in my career where I thought, well, I can say the popular thing to be cool with everybody else, but I never do. Even when they're supremely unpopular opinions, I always look, you can watch me and like my opinions or not like my opinions. That's all fair. But you will 100% always know that it's my honest opinion, right? That's it. You may agree with it. You may not agree with it. It may be popular, may be unpopular. I will always give my honest opinion. If I like it, I mean, literally, like I was just talking about this, even when I had Stephen Amell, who I adore and love Stephen Amell, but even when I had Stephen Amell in my studio and he brought up the whole idea about, you know, what could go wrong. And I had to look him in the face and say, yeah, this season, the whole stuff your guys do with Laurel, if it keeps going that bad, I'm going to give up on your show, because I had to be honest. I had to be honest. And if Steven's watching, I still love Stephen Amell. I think he's one of the most awesome guys in this business. But I'm always going to be, so #1, I made 100% commitment to myself that I would always be honest with my opinion. I would never give an opinion that I think people want to hear. I will never give an opinion just because I think this is the popular opinion. I will never jump on bandwagons. I'll always just give my opinion. And because I do that, a lot of people don't like my opinions, and that's okay. I think always being 100% committed to giving my honest opinion is one of the main key reasons why I've been able to be successful for this long. #2, I've always been willing to bet on myself. And I think #3, whether I'm doing the show solo or whether I'm doing shows with panels, I think have about an 80% success rate of always picking really good people to work with. So I would think that would be one of the reasons that I've definitely been, again, I wouldn't say the number one person, but I think that I've been successful. I think those are the main key reasons I've been able to be successful. And yeah. And here's the thing. I also like to look at things analytically, right? Like some people don't like that I bring up numbers and statistics and historical things and all that kind of stuff. But to me, like whenever we talk about, say, Inside Out 2, I'll go look to put in context of what we're doing, and we'll bring up the lists of the top grossing Pixar films of all time, or a list of the top grossing animated films of all time, or a list of what's been happening in the box office later. But I believe, like from a sports fan point of view, I also believe in art, there is data. And so often on the John Campea Show and in our segments, I like to analyze data. And not everybody does. A lot of people just like to go purely from the gut and what happens, but I like to research and I like to give data, and I like that stuff. And I think that appeals to people to a degree. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I've been able to be successful for whatever degree of success, whether you consider it big success or modest success. I think that's the reason I've been able to be successful and around this long. Because believe me, when I tell you that for 15 years, for 20 years, I haven't had a day go by. I mean this 100% dead serious. I haven't had a day go by for 20 years that I haven't had somebody write in to tell me, you're finished. You're done. You're not going to be around for another month. You're irrelevant now. For every day for the last 20 years, I've had at least one, sometimes two, sometimes 10, sometimes 20, sometimes 50, saying, your channel's going to be dead now. You're going to be gone in a few days. You're over. I had people telling me that 15 years ago. I had people telling me that 12 years ago. I had people telling me that 5 years ago. I have had people telling me that today, right? But I stay committed to betting on myself, approach it the way I do as a fan, which is analytically, and always give my honest opinion, even when it's not popular. And those are the reasons why I think I've been able to continue to be successful. All right. And I'm still here. All right. Next up. Oh, wait, we've already did all those questions. Now I'm just taking ones from the live chat. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see here. What else we got here? Brody writes in the chat, what is your least favorite comic book movie? I mean, my first reaction is to say Madam Web, just because I saw it so recently, but it's probably not Madam Web. No, it's Catwoman. Catwoman. Halle Berry's Catwoman. That is in the unholy trinity of the worst, not just comic book movies, of the worst movies of all time. I have a unholy trinity of the three worst wide released Hollywood studio produced movies ever made. They are Highlander 2, Battlefield Earth, and Catwoman. So yes, Catwoman I think is the worst comic book movie ever made. Let's see here. Also, we got George Harris says, John, did you see John Cena in the early? Sorry, don't know what you mean, George. Did I see him in the early what? Let's see. Sir Malston says, Meryl Streep has 21 Oscar nominations. Is she in the top 5 greatest actors of all time? Yeah. I mean, ask anybody who knows anything, truly knows anything about the movie business. Meryl Streep, number 1, is the greatest actress of all time. She's the street monster. And I would maybe even say the 2nd or 3rd greatest actor of all time, only behind the GOAT of all GOATs. And maybe behind, I don't know, maybe she's number 2. Maybe she's number 2. Yeah, but yes, I think easily where I put her in the top 5, I'd have to give some thought of, but definitely in the top 5, 100% in the top 5, maybe even in the top 2. But so I'd say number one is the GOAT, the Bret Hart of acting, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be, Daniel Day-Lewis, right? That's the greatest actor ever to live. Don't think he'll ever be topped. But after that, Meryl then comes in number 2, 3, or 4, I think. But anyway, again, that's just a subjective answer. Let's see here. I am JMS writes, do you think Hulk shows up in Captain America 4? Like Green Hulk? No. I think I remember him saying specifically he wasn't going to be in Captain America 4. So I don't expect we'll see him there. So look, is it possible? It's absolutely possible. Do I really think he's going to show up there? No, I don't. All right, guys, and that'll do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for being here and making this little show part of your day. I am now going to go run some quick errands, and then Ann and I are going to head into Hollywood to go to the Hollywood Bowl to see our John Williams annual Maestro of the Movies concert. Very excited tonight. Again, we're going with our friends Kaori, who many of you guys know. She's been on the show a lot, and her beau, AEW's Nigel McGuinness. The four of us are going to be going out there tonight, and hopefully we're going to have a really, really good time. So I hope you guys have a wonderful evening tonight, and you guys get to do some really cool and fun things. And we're going to be back Monday for the next installment of the John Campea Show. We'll look forward to seeing you then. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.